All right. Appreciate everyone being here at the Voice of College Football. We are not going to delay the show any longer because laptops don't work and they're cycling forever and cannot fire up the monitor. We appreciate you being here. Comments and questions are welcome. Here's the deal. We talk college football with you every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. This is going to continue Monday through Friday, every weekday through the season, which is now until January 20th. I love college football, but that just doesn't seem right. It's in some way, I can't explain it, not right. That should be a Super Bowl date. The Super Bowl's in February now. I know if you're under the age of 25, that's normal, but the Super Bowl shouldn't be played in February, and we should not have college football championship games on January 20th. However, this is the new world, and we adapt. We're flexible when it comes to the unimportant stuff here at the Voice of College Football. When it comes to the important stuff, as I succinctly delivered to somebody the other day, I let them know our standards don't change based on culture changing. Culture is corrupt and moronic, so we don't change our standard. Our standards stay the same. But when it comes to flexibility, of course, we will do that. Okay. Again, 10 a.m. Eastern time every day. So my hope is to do an expanded show, meaning we're on here for more than an hour. If you know anything about YouTube, you know that I was making more money stocking shelves at Sparkle Market in Stowe, Ohio when I was 18 years old. Seriously. Making more money doing that. And cost of living was a little less. So the deal is we make like $3 or $4 for an hour delivering here college football talk with you. So we need to hit the $100 mark, whether that's Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Those are the most effective ways. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, $100. We go to what we will call Ode to Dan Patrick, overtime. And again, we appreciate your support. So if you love the show, love what we do, and want to expand the show every day, that's I don't mind either way. I'm good either way. So we will do an action-packed, fun-filled time of 1 hour each day with you. So never fear. We'll shut it down at 11 o'clock. Boom. We're back here the next day. So no issues. We will give you 1 free hour. Because we are benevolent, we produce more content than anybody in college football. So we appreciate that. Amazon links in the description section. All right, let's get to same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. Amazon link, please give it a try. Still just cycling. And this has been a phenomenal laptop. This has done so much work for me, but just another expense of the operation. I have to buy some new laptops. All right. Coaches poll came out. We're going to go through the coaches poll, why it sucks. Maybe we can't expect them to do any better in forecasting the season. And is the top 25 even a forecast? For me, it's not one. I'll explain that. And of course, your show names. For right now, this is just the college football show, which I got to say I like. But we will certainly gift gear from the Voice of College Football store. We will gift gear to one lucky individual out there, whatever name we select. I counted 21. I deliver that to the staff, the team here at the Voice of College Football for us to select a winner. So we will get back to you on that one. There is one that is gaining all sorts of tractions. One of you has selected a name that people love. I think it's a good name, but it's just like every email I get back, that's the name. Okay. Maybe that'll turn out to be the name of the show. Even if not, if it's the winner, then you will get some gear here at the Voice of College Football. All right. Again, coaches poll. We may have some guests today. I don't know. And we will take your calls. And in addition to the coaches poll, we do want to scan the news. Many days, especially during the long, arduous off season, not much news that's really news. If you look at the college football headlines, like I search college football news probably 3 times a day. College football news, SEC football news, Big Ten football news, etc. Recruiting news, then the team specific. I'm doing the Florida State show, Florida State football news. Most of it's not news. It's made up. It's made up. But we're going to talk football in about 3 weeks. I mean, talk about, that just happened Saturday. There will be too much to talk about. So hopefully we can extend this show past 1 hour. All right. We get the glasses on because we want to go through the headlines before we talk the coaches poll. Okay, we'll see what this nonsense is about. I'm sorry. We'll hear from Jim Harbaugh. And it's kind of strange, actually, that everything that I can think of concerning Jim Harbaugh, aside from football, the important stuff, the stuff that matters, everything aside from football, I have found this guy to be an upstanding guy. Now, I don't know the man. I'm not going to vouch for him. It's kind of like there's a few other coaches I could say the same thing, that based on being in the limelight and the spotlight for as long as he has, which would be longer than any coach in college football. Of course, he's not in college football right now, but you understand what I'm stating. Go back to his playing days in which he was a star. He was a legitimate, one of the best players in college football, star. And when you're the quarterback at Michigan, if you're any good, then you're going to gain all sorts of attention. And so since 1985, Jim Harbaugh's been a national celebrity within the sports context. Do I really believe that most people know who Jim Harbaugh is on the streets? No, they don't. We live in a bubble, a sports bubble, but within the sports bubble, then he was in the NFL forever. He had a long NFL career, successful NFL career, and then obviously into coaching. So, really, the guy has no marks against him that I can think of, and he has certainly backed some worthy causes. None of that has anything to do necessarily with what we're about to read, because I don't know what we're going to read, except for he's going to deny what happened at Michigan. Is he telling the truth? I don't know. Nobody knows at this point. After being one of 7 members from the 2023 Michigan football program accused of violating NCAA rules in a draft of the NCAA's notice of allegations obtained by ESPN Monday, Chargers coach Jim Harbaugh denied any wrongdoing. Never lie, never cheat, never steal. I was raised with that lesson. So I got to hand it to him here. His track record of 40 years, what does it tell us? That he's never done any of those things. Again, I'm not saying he's never done any of those things. Follow along. I'm saying that his resume, his track record states all those things. So if I ever lied, yes. If I ever cheated, yes. If I ever stolen anything, I don't remember. I can't come up with anything there. Do I do those things? When is the last time I did any of those things? I couldn't tell you. So, like, we understand this is in principle. This is in principle. I think there are people that have those principles and they live that way habitually. Does that mean that they've never at the age of 12 done any of those things? I don't believe that to be true. But yes, again, meaning his public record, he lives to those principles. And based on, again, his public record, his track record, I think, unlike a lot of people, he can stand and say that. I've raised my family on that lesson. I have preached that lesson to the teams I've coached. No one is perfect. Okay, that's a good one right there. If you stumble, you apologize and you make it right. Today, I do not apologize. I did not participate, was not aware nor complicit in those said allegations. So it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. So we don't know if he's telling the truth. However, again, people are typically who they are all the time. And as a public figure, again, I don't know what's going on in his personal life, but as a public figure, those words mean more coming out of certain individuals' mouths. And out of Jim Harbaugh's mouth, after 40 years in the public eye and having no scandals, public or private or professionally, don't think there's going to be anything else that we need to read here. Obviously, he took Jess Minter and Steve Clinkscale with him from Michigan, and they're also accused of recruiting violations in the draft notice. Well, those are the recruiting violations. Let's keep those separate from the Connor Stallions cheating issue. Clinkscale is accused of helping a recruit get verified on Instagram and of writing a $100 check for a golf charity event run by a recruit's father. Former Michigan linebackers coach, which those seem to be petty things, especially the first one. I don't know what that entails. Helping a recruit get verified. So obviously not like, doesn't seem like it's a technical issue where the recruit didn't understand Instagram. It's not like, oh, you got to click that. He did whatever. I don't know enough about it that he would help him get verified. He would meet the standards, obviously, of Instagram, whatever those are, to get verified. I'll be looking at that someday. The second one, unless he had no idea. No, he had to know. Okay, obviously. I was reading that a bit differently. He had to know that a recruit's father ran the golf charity. So the second issue with Clinkscale is just stupidity. That's just dumb. He should be smarter than that. It could have been completely innocent. Now, obviously, it reeks of I'm influencing a recruit by giving to his father's charity. Obviously, this could not be argued by the most ardent Michigan fan. This is just, that's exactly what it looks like. However, are there situations, is there a world in which people give to charity actually because they want to give to a charity? Yes, that could have been the case. Regardless, it's against the rules. And so it's a stupid thing to do. He knew not to do that. Former Michigan linebackers coach Chris Partridge and former defensive coordinator Minter are accused of level 2 violations for allegedly sending text messages to a high school sophomore recruit. Again, those are the allegations, of course, and the investigation stemming from the recruiting violations during COVID in particular that led to Harbaugh's suspension at the outset of 2023, separate yet, if they're within the program and these people are involved with the Connor Stallions, if they're involved with the Connor Stallions shenanigans, then they're separate, should be kept separate, but that's supporting evidence. You run a filthy program, boom. We've proven it here. It's just like when you appear in court on certain measures, certain counts and allegations. Well, I'd like to get my monitor running. The there is a tension there in the legal process of separating events and saying we are dealing with this issue, this allegation, this has nothing to do with it, but it becomes a character, and in this case, not just an individual character issue, it becomes a program character issue. And so then that becomes part of the overall evaluation of these individuals and the Michigan program. So there you have it. To me, now I am stating this as somebody who has read all the same things that you have. Maybe I've got a smidge more intel, maybe just a smidge from talking to a lot of people outside of what is read online, but not very much. Okay. Is that I don't know how these defensive coaches and the coordinator would not know what Connor Stalions is up to. That cannot be explained to me in a believable way. That cannot be explained to me in a believable way. It just can't. But there certainly have been situations in which what the outcome, what the true outcome, the reality of the situation is, seems unbelievable. That does occur. That does happen. So we've played this out in so many shows here in regards to, what does this look like? What does this look like on the field? Connor Stalions has run a rogue operation, but put it on his Michigan credit card, correct? So that's the first stumbling block I have in terms of him being completely rogue in this operation is how does that happen? Okay, unless he called it something else on his credit. I don't know. He explained it away in some other manner. Yeah, that's kind of tough to do. I'm at all these stadiums. All these people are at these stadiums. Yeah. How that gets I can't get past that one. As we understand it, I can't get past that one. The paper trail of financial transactions just. So that's the first one. The second one is simply the game day execution. I'm nobody knows it, rogue staffer. I've gained all this intel that nobody knows about. Nobody knows about it. Nobody has a clue about this. In these, what is it? Do we know the number of people that he hired or at least contacted to go out and scout and film? Have we seen that number? We know roughly how many games involving how many teams were scouted. Are we talking about 5 people, 20 people? None of those people contacted anyone or talked to friends or to spread the word and get that out there that would have come back to anybody on the Michigan coaching staff. Certainly, that's feasible. That's feasible. I would also think it would be feasible that people that are in the know, people that are actually on staff, the ones executing, something would have gotten back to my cousin told me, my wife talked to her best friend, but that's just pure speculation on my part. So did not get back to the Michigan coaching staff. And they hire this guy who is just overtly arrogant about his espionage skills. Now, that could have been thought to be You are going to be on the up and up, and you are going to steal these signs in a manner in which is legal. Okay. All right, sure. We'll take that, because it's one of those that I question, but certainly we don't want to convict people just based on probabilities. No, that's not the way it works. So then this Connor Stallions has this lofty position on the. He does not have a lofty title, but think about his role. So he's a lowly staff member in title. He's a lowly staff member in title. Yes. We have no idea who these people are on other collegiate football programs. We've never heard of them. We don't know their names. We don't know what they do. They chart. If you're an analyst, and he wasn't even an analyst, I do not believe. The analysts are cutting up video tape on give me every 3rd and 5 situation in the red zone for Kansas State. And then they bring that to the offensive coordinator. They're doing those sorts of things. How many times does Kansas State run left versus run right versus this versus that in these situations? All of that sort of stuff is what the analysts are doing, among other things. So for this guy, again, I don't want to equate him to an analyst, but again, this guy is the lowest of the low on the totem pole, but because he has this special skill, he's then, bam, he's right there. And I don't know if this is every play of every game, regardless of who they're playing. I don't know. I know that there have been pictures taken of him in key situations against pretty good opponents where he suddenly has this front row seat. And this is obviously, or apparently, I don't want to take it to extremes of saying this is 100% guaranteed. This is where he's working his magic, stealing signs in the moment, getting those to the defensive players. This obviously is known by the various defensive coordinators. What did Michigan have? 2 during this 3-year span? So I'm just clarifying how this operation obviously worked without anyone knowing it. And that's how it worked. After being able to do this for 3... So he did this for 3 seasons. Think about this. He did this for 3 seasons. I'm sorry, let's be accurate. 2 seasons and the start of a 3rd season about halfway through. I would think after that amount of time that one of 2 things would happen. This guy's amazing. This guy's amazing. Give him a bonus. Give him a better title. He's obsessed with Michigan football. He's got to be into titles. Let's give him a better looking title. And he's making $35,000 a year. He's making 90 now. That's chump change to us. And he's helping us win football games. He's doing an outstanding job. I don't think this is a point that can really be refuted either. Either the guy's doing an excellent job at what he's doing, and we're going to reward him for that, or this is utter nonsense. He sucks. Stop it. We don't want to hear from you again. Do your job. Do your regular job, or we may fire you at the end of the season, whatever. It's not getting it done, and we don't believe in what you're doing. It doesn't seem to be either it's screwing us up or it doesn't make any difference. So just stop. I would think that could have been evaluated after the first season. This is a point that's just come to me in the last few minutes that I've not heard anybody state. Maybe somebody has. I'm not out there watching other people's shows, but was the guy deemed to have been a success? Was he deemed by the Michigan coaching staff and Jim Harbaugh in particular, who's calling the shots? Is he doing a good job? They don't know this, but is he doing a good job cheating? But to them, is he doing a good job of stealing signs on game day? I'm just asking the question. I just know that I was going to point to my former employer, but it's really obvious to anyone. You don't have to be in the work world, especially in more of a corporate structure. Now, if you work for a mom and pop deal, you could be doing an outstanding job and they just say flat out, we don't have that much more money. We can't help you. Or, we're going to make you the, you're going from maintenance guy to manager like that. But within the corporate structure, it's more buttoned up. But within football, that's a different deal. It's not like you get your 3% raise. No, we like you. You're valued. You're getting the job done. That kind of stuff is cutthroat. It's either valued and rewarded to the hilt, or it is banished, and he would be banished. He wouldn't have been doing a third season of scouting, sign stealing on game day legally if he wasn't doing a great job. Right? Okay. What's going on in the chat here? Blue Wolverine showing up. To lighten the mood. Thank you for that, Blue Wolverine. Thank you so much. We are $95 away from hour 2 and overtime. Jim Harbaugh had a cameo on Saved by the Bell as Screech's cousin. I not that I can recollect that episode. I would admit that I watched more Saved by the Bell than I would care to admit, but I guess that's what I'm doing. But I was no crazy Saved by the Bell fan. I was one of those. There's always those run of shows for many of us where we're kind of embarrassed and know how stupid and inane the product is, but it's still kind of a guilty pleasure type of thing. That was Saved by the Bell, 90210. I'm going to make fun of this show. Going to tell my friends I make fun of this show. They watch the show. They'll make fun of it because we're guys. We shouldn't be watching this stupid crap, but we do. And we actually enjoy it to a certain extent. But, Saved by the Bell, I could have never told you when the show was on. Like, it's not like I could have said, oh, it's on every day at 4 p.m. I had no idea when it was on. It was on all the time. You ran into it all the time. So, yes. Anyway, you guys don't care about my TV preferences. Jim Harbaugh had a cameo. So I think I recall that more from football coverage of Jim Harbaugh telling us that and showing us that than I do actually having watched it. I don't believe that. And I got to tell you, Jim Harbaugh is one quirky kind of guy. So he could sell the Screech's cousin. And I say that with all due respect. That's not a bad thing. It's good to have a personality. It's good to be different. Jim Harbaugh is kind of a quirky, kind of an awkward kind of guy. But when I say awkward, the dude's a better athlete than all of us. So athletes aren't typically awkward, but maybe off the playing field, and has proven to be extremely successful. The guy he's had one of the best coaching resumes and coaching careers of anybody in the history of college and pro football. He's at the pantheon of that distinction, that Pete Carroll, Jimmy Johnson, who else? That level, he's right up there with them. And I know he technically did not win a Super Bowl. I'm more focused on performance in my evaluation of their coaching abilities than technically, what's his name? Kaepernick. Can't think of his first name. Kaepernick couldn't complete one more. Colin Kaepernick could not complete one more pass that would have won a Super Bowl. But thank you for that, Blue Wolverine. We are $95 away from overtime, so we appreciate your contributions. I can only imagine this chat at this point after I've railed on. I'm actually not railing. I'm just stating I would love to know what I've stated that is not. It's not even speculation. It's just reason. I'm not saying that's exactly the way things went. Mike, we appreciate you being here, Mike. Mike's a great guy. Mike supports us here at the Voice of College Football. Hey, Mark, Ole Miss would be a great exploration in levels of cheating. I've explored Ole Miss's cheating. I've explored Ole Miss's cheating extensively. Shoot, I got paid to do it. Now, none of you got to see that. We're talking about almost 30 years ago. But yes, my first job in sports. I got just slapped right in the face. I arrived from Mississippi from Ohio, take my first sportscasting job, and boom, Ole Miss is like there. I got hired week 2 of the college football season, and Joe Lee Duns, the interim coach at Ole Miss, Billy Brewer got the heave-ho. Tommy Tuberville was a year away from being hired, and they were close to the death penalty. Close to the death penalty. So I know I'm just kind of kiddingly not answering your question because you're, of course, talking about the here and now in the last 10 years with Hugh Freeze, and I guess you're talking about Lane Kiffin, but we've got nothing on Lane Kiffin right now. And obviously there are all sorts of things done legally. Legally is a bad term because we're not talking about the law. We're talking about the guidelines, the rules within the rules today that were not legal within the rules 5 years ago. So I don't know what kind of cheating we would be talking about now, Mike. So let's be fair. I understand what you're alluding to, but you're alluding to a different world. Pre-NIL, post-NIL, 2 different worlds. There still are rules that can be broken, but I don't know at this point why you would break them, because you can pretty much operate paying players above board within the rules. So why break the rules? I couldn't even tell you what those rules are off the top of my head. I know that I've seen them. So there are certain stipulations about contacting players and all of that business. But in terms of just the boom, there's $1 million for this year. You're going to come play for us? Great. Let's do the deal. Let's sign. Let those poor fools that you're playing for now know that you're leaving. But I get your point. Ole Miss has had a sordid past going back again to the early 90s. And then 20 years later with Hugh Freeze. But you may not like Lane Kiffin. You may not enjoy his jabs at whatever he entertains himself making fun of that particular day. You may think because Ole Miss has a culture of cheating in the past, but administrations do change, people do change, cultures can change. I'm not saying that it has. There was a time frame in which everybody in the SEC had allegations, confirmed violations, and penalties. I think like a 10-year span, everybody in the SEC at the time cheated. But much of what was cheating then is not cheating now. So in terms of the current situation at Ole Miss, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe there's something out there going on. Maybe there's some kind of rumors going on concerning Ole Miss cheating that I am not aware of, that you can enlighten me. But if you're talking about Hugh Freeze, that was 10 years ago. Blue Wolverine says he's awkward. Yeah, he's just a quirky kind of guy. I'm sure if somebody evaluated my communication skills, they'd say, Mark, you do this all the time, do that all the time. You say this all the time. It's kind of quirky, kind of, yeah, just, we all have different personalities. Nothing wrong with it. But it's funny because he presents himself as aloof, but he's a very grounded individual in his values and his standards, but he seems aloof. I am guessing that most people are here to talk about Michigan football and all this business going on. I was going to get to the coaches poll. We've got about 20 or 25 minutes. And again, hour 2 overtime, we need $100, as mentioned off the top. Unfortunately, YouTube, they don't pay us anything to run these shows. So I'm making $3 or $4. And so we obviously appreciate your support because we would like to do these shows for a longer period of time. So, yeah. If you guys have any questions or comments, if you're just joining us, I ranted for a half hour about this. So I went on my rant. And so take that in if you want to go back. So we will leave this alone unless there are comments and questions, or certainly give me a call. So the link is in the chat, but let's drop it in here one more time. Here is the deal with guests here on this morning show is, I guess I don't want to take the time to send out the link to all the individual potential guests. So I let them know that it's going to be on X on our promotional post that we send out. So we just say, hey, we're going live. This is what we're talking about. And I send out the link and I let them know that's going to be there. But I really can't expect them. I think they want personal invitations. So I'm going to have to clean that up because we want this to be a power-packed show every day, and it will be. And I'll just shoot, once football season starts, I don't need any guests. I can talk football all day once we've got games going. Again, I went on my rant. Hopefully you caught it because I think I presented some angles that I don't necessarily know that anybody's delving into that just hit me as I was ranting. But yes, hour 2 for $100, where I'm going to go to the coaches poll. But of course, we want your calls as well. So those are first priority to real MVPs here.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this morning?
I'm good.
Well, I found a few minutes to step away, and I just would like to react to the quote you read. You know, Mark, it's ironic that the guy that's already been caught of cheating because of the COVID dark period violations has said he's never cheated before. I mean, Mark, that's like the criminal who says he's never committed a crime before. It's kind of hard to believe him, which ironically also makes the statement says he's never lied about it a lie, and the statement itself, it's kind of like an inception type thing going on with that. How are we supposed to trust somebody who says something that's just a blatant lie on its face?
So your point is extremely valid. I took it more in the spirit of the statement. So let me explain. You are correct. Let's take away all the Connor Stallions situation. Let's just go back to the first issue with the recruiting violations during the COVID period. You're right. He was responsible for a football program that broke the rules and recruited against the rules, and they were caught, and they didn't cooperate, and they said that they didn't do anything wrong. And yes, everything you just stated is lined up. I was basically taking more from a holistic standpoint that this guy's been in the football spotlight for 40 years. And yeah, they broke the rules in that case. I found it to be, based on my knowledge of what that was all about, to be somewhat ticky-tack. And obviously he didn't cooperate. He probably took a moral high ground to a certain extent to say kind of my rules, because this is, the rule book is so inane that I don't believe I'm cheating. This isn't legitimate cheating. Therefore, it should be okay. Therefore, I'm not cooperating. This is ridiculous. And so I think he's speaking from his own, like if you ever were part of an organization where you thought a certain rule didn't matter, was stupid, either was just nonsensical or was actually unethical in itself, but you were an employee of that organization, you broke the rule, and you're technically a rule breaker, but you felt as though you actually have a higher standard, let's say. So if you follow my thought there, and really he's had a pretty clean record. That's what I was pointing out, is that he has had a clean record in regards to what we know of his personal life, which I know doesn't matter here, but it is something that we found out about other people, celebrities and sports celebrities. And then again, as a professional, had what I consider to be a pretty clean record over 40 years.
Yeah, I agree too, Mark. But the difference is, if there's rules and programs and stuff I don't like, I still try to follow them to the best ability. I might raise issue and go through the proper channels and say I believe these rules are moronic and stupid, but I wouldn't just I wouldn't just completely violate those rules and say I've never cheated. I think that is dishonest to say that, because you can say I don't agree with the rules and I believe these rules are stupid and should be taken away, but to say I didn't cheat just because I don't agree with the rules is inaccurate.
Yes, it is inaccurate, but I'm sure you would agree in perceiving Jim Harbaugh's rhetoric and actions through the years. And he reminds me of somebody else in the political spectrum, that you have to kind of know what they're talking about. You kind of have to know how to interpret what they're saying, that they're not very specific. He is not very specific with his words. He doesn't always know the right terminology to use. So you have to kind of know, oh, that's what he's talking about. That's what he means. Okay, I can see that, or I get the point. But if you took him verbatim, he is not good at using words, vocabulary that really explain. And this goes even beyond controversial things, just even to football as well, that he's obviously a great communicator. You cannot be this successful without being a great communicator, but that is probably more from an interpersonal standpoint. But yes, in terms of explaining himself at a podium, he does a poor job.
I think that's a fair criticism, Mark. Now, something I've seen a lot for the Michigan side of this is he's acting Connor Stallions, that is a complete lone wolf, which makes no logical or rational sense to me, but I've seen this everywhere, which is ironic because even in the article itself, it describes how people were involved in the scheme of cheating, even though they didn't think it was cheating. So what do you think about the defense that it's a lone wolf?
So you may have missed some of my rant. So this is basically what I said was I have several issues with what is being explained as some kind of plausible way how this all could have occurred without anybody else knowing it. One is that, if I am not mistaken, if I've got this correct, that Connor Stallions paid for this operation with a Michigan credit card, with his company credit card. If I'm wrong, somebody catch me on that, but I've seen this several times. So how in the world is he justifying? I'm sure if you send in an expense account, I have a lot of experience with sending in expense accounts with corporations, and you've got to explain yourself. Oh, you spent all this, you spent $3,000 or $4,000 on what? Okay, that's point number one. Because when this first broke, as I'm sure you recall, there was all this speculation. This dude makes $30,000 or $40,000 a year. How is he paying for all this by himself? Like, is he, does he have, is he independently wealthy on the side or something like that, where he can just do that, or this money has to be coming from somewhere? So that's stumbling point number one for me. Stumbling point number two is me just talking through a few minutes ago, how is this executed? Okay, this guy has all this intel, and he is just kind of viewed as this wonder child, and we go about calling our plays, calling our defensive schemes, and then if he pops up and says, no, do this, then we listen to him. Because again, somebody would have to correct me and show me evidence otherwise that at any other football program that somebody of his lowly rank on the football staff has this prominent position. And again, I clearly stated, I can't say this to be every play of every game, but in key situations, he has been at least photographed right next to the defensive coordinator during a key situation against, I think you could fill in the opponent. So how did this, they just took his word that, okay, we hired this guy that just boasted on his resume, on his LinkedIn in particular, about his espionage type skills. We hired this guy. We don't know how he does it. We just assume that he is able to do this in the moment, legally, within the rules, because that's, of course, within the rules. If you can steal the signs, if you can look across the field and boom, you're that good, go right ahead. It's legal that he's that good, and we are believing that, and therefore we are trusting his abilities. And, it just hit me a minute ago that there's all this debate about the effectiveness of this. Does this have any impact? Okay, he did this for 2021, 2022, and roughly half of the 2023 season. We know that football coaches don't have much patience. They can't. There's too much on the line. So either he was successful at this, he was good at it, and they kept him involved, which we know to be true, because if it didn't work, I don't know if he would have lasted the first season in 2021, that they would have said, what you're giving us is not helping. It's nonsense. It's not working. Shut down whatever you're doing. We're not listening to you. And he'd probably be fired. But apparently it's simple deduction that it obviously worked because they kept him in that role to do that for 2.5 years. Does that make
Correct.
sense?
And correct.
Yeah.
I think Sean on the chat show with the callers, I think he made a great point. I don't think you were there, but he said, Kentucky was hit with probation and vacated wins because they didn't cheat, or they did cheat, but they shouldn't have known and couldn't have known they cheated. And he thinks that was precedent for what Michigan's going to have coming in the future, because the NCAA needs, for PR purposes, to say, point to somebody else and say, hey, we did this to them. It's only fair we upgrade the punishment for Michigan, because look what we did to poor Kentucky over here. They didn't know and couldn't have known, and we agreed to that, and they got hammered. So if that's the precedent they set 4 days ago, because I heard that Michigan caller after I called in talking about Tennessee and all that stuff, how it was just as full. How about 4 days ago, Mark? Is that more recent precedent for that caller?
I would hope so.
Okay, so 4 days ago, Kentucky gets hammered because of they shouldn't have known and couldn't have known about cheating and weren't expected to know about it. And they got hit with probation for 2 years and vacated wins. If they get hit with vacated wins for something they shouldn't have known and didn't know, don't you think it would logically follow that if somebody did cheat and didn't know about it, should also have their wins vacated?
That is the logic. That makes sense to me. And I am one that for the most of the time that we have had to deal with this issue, going back to last October, that has been pretty much on this. I believe I have been abundantly, extremely fair to Michigan, typically arguing on their side to try to explain this away in some manner. And certainly I've allowed the football production, the winning on the field, to influence the impact or supposed impact of it. But again, as I just explained a few minutes ago, this just hit me today. Maybe I'm not that brilliant, but I've not heard that take made by anybody else, that basically this guy had to be good at what he was doing, and it had to be effective, or they would have stopped him from doing it. They would have not allowed his services, but he continued to have the same role for what was going to be 3 football. It would be probably still going on into this season if it wasn't stopped. I would expect he would still be on the staff and he would still be doing what he's doing.
Correct. And I also wanted to respond to that Michigan caller. He said on Dan Murphy's Twitter, he talked about it, how the Stallions thing was only just him and it was going to be fine. I didn't find anything on Dan Murphy's Twitter about anything like that at all. The only thing I saw Dan Murphy's Twitter post was the article on ESPN with a little caption, a blurb about what you expect to read in the articles. I have no idea where that Michigan caller got any of that stuff at, because Dan Murphy hardly tweets on his Twitter account. So for him, I have no idea where he got that at, like none. I know people are it's ironic. You know the term cognitive dissonance, Mark?
Sure.
I think that's a lot what Michigan fans are experiencing. You know how some people can be too far away from a subject and they can't get the full picture? I think Michigan fans are too close and they can also receive the full picture. What do you think about that?
Well, this is an odd connection to make, but I'll make it because it's the first thing that came to mind. When I came home from having dinner with my wife at the time and turned on the TV to watch the Knicks and the Rockets in 1994 play the NBA Finals, and there was a white Bronco headed down the highway, and quickly within 30 seconds, I knew who was driving that Bronco. I was not some fanatical O.J. Simpson supporter fan, but I liked the guy, and I didn't want that to be true. So what did I do in watching news coverage for the next couple of weeks? I thought of every possible way in which this isn't true. He didn't do it. This guy's too good of a guy. I like him. Now, that's not how I would have explained it, but that's what was going on in my mind. I don't want this to be true. And my attachment to him was very minimal. Like I could have gone a year without mentioning his name. So my attachment wasn't anywhere close to what a Michigan football fan's attachment is to this football team. So I can understand it that people are extremely attached to their team. I also think we are somewhat dysfunctional in our thinking, where we attribute our own value, whether we're aware of it or not, to our football team, or our football team just won a championship. That reflects well on me. Our football team just went 3-9. Oh, I'm going to distance myself from that. So yeah, those are the emotions of a fan. And that's one of the things that makes this sport so popular. So we got to take the good with the bad, or not necessarily the bad, just we're emotional people.
Right. I still see some people in this chat saying it's not illegal to still sign Mark. What do we say to those people? Like, is there any way those people can be convinced at all Michigan cheated? Anyway.
No, it's not illegal to steal signs on the field on game day. Or if you are watching on television and you are somehow able to, and of course we don't get the ability to do that, but let's just keep it to the first point. Yes, if you were that good at stealing signs, then you were that good at stealing signs. No, that's not illegal. What he did was that we would not be going through all this. The NCAA and others would not be spending millions and millions of dollars on legal fees and everything else that goes along with this if there was not something to this. We know that a member of the Michigan football staff cheated. That's confirmed. He cheated.
Right. Correct, Mark.
And it's inconceivable, because of what we've discussed here and so many other reasonable thoughts, that nobody else knew about it. But that's what we need to find out.
There's a lot of people saying that Sherrone Moore and or Jim Harbaugh could get a show cause for this incident that's occurred. What do you think about that?
I'd have to give that some thought. I truly would have to get some thought. But Darrell, we appreciate you being here. Call anytime. Yeah, I just wanted to cut the conversation there because we want to get to our guest who just popped on here. But
you're fine. It's good talking to you.
Thanks, Darrell. Yeah, so let's go to our guy, Kyle Loomis, E2C Network. And Kyle, I'm going to warn you right now that you are going to be the least popular person here. But it's not Kyle's fault. It's not Kyle's fault. It's my fault. I so much want to talk about Auburn football, and I want to talk about this recruiting run that Auburn's on. So I've been asking Kyle to jump on the show. Kyle's here. We give preference to our guests. And so, Kyle, thanks for waiting, first of all. But, of course, this Michigan thing, I didn't even put it in the title of the show or anything, but people can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And I understand. I've been talking about this. I've tried to stay away from it as much as possible, but you can't. I cover the sport.
Right.
For like, what's it been now? August back to, we're talking 10 months at this point. And I actually came up with, and I don't sell myself as the brightest individual on the planet, but I came up with a couple other angles that I don't think are being talked about just here in the last 10 or 15 minutes. So there's a lot to talk about here.
Look, I chose the great day to come on the show between all this drama with Michigan and all that. Folks, let me just tell you, if y'all think y'all have drama up there, you haven't been seeing anything that's going on in the state of Alabama. We've been tracking Dodge Chargers for a long time. If we want to get into cheating and stuff like that. But anyway, don't want to open up another can of worms for you today. But it seems like it's been a very lively conversation from the few minutes that I've been watching, and some very interesting opinions as well. I'll put it that way.
Well, we didn't have any calls for the first 30 minutes, so I just kind of ranted and railed, and I started to come up with various conclusions.
Yeah.
Again, for all that I've talked about this for 10 months, a few other things involved hit me, and you probably heard, and we'll get to Auburn here in 10 seconds, simply that if this was not effective, and this Connor Stallions was not doing a good job, then I would think it's been confirmed that he was doing this in 2021, 2022, would have continued through 23. And I'm sure he'd still be on the staff doing it now. But in October, it was discovered that if this was not effective, they would have stopped doing it.
Right. No, I agree.
And obviously, it was effective, so he continued to do it.
I mean, that's a logical way to think about it. I mean, obviously,
you know how football coaches are fanatical and how they run operations. They're trying to win championships. The dude's making $9 million a year as Jim Harbaugh, and he can't beat Ohio State. He's 0-5. You know, it was desperate times at Michigan. And I'm not saying desperate connected to then they cheated. I'm just saying this is where the program was, and this was Harbaugh at the time. So if he's got this wonder boy that's stealing signs, but it's not working after 4 or 5 games, I don't think they're going to continue to do it.
Right. I mean, it's not logical to continue to do that. You know, coaches are creatures of habit. If they find something that's not going to work, they're going to stop it immediately, no matter what that is. And they're going to try to move on to something else that will work, and they will continue to milk that for all it's worth. So, I mean, that's a logical way of thinking about it.
Folks, this is Kyle Loomis from E2C Network. Talks Auburn athletics, Auburn culture, Auburn community, and lucky for us, of course, Auburn football.
Lots of it.
This recruiting run, I have been checking this by the day, practically. I know I'm exaggerating slightly, but within the last couple of weeks, and it seems like, oh, another top 50 player, another top 50 player. There's a top 100 player. What is going on?
I'll tell you what's going on Big Cat Weekend. It has been something that has been around for a while, and I believe I'm correct in saying this has started with Gene Chizik, was carried on through Malzahn. What Harsin did with it, nobody knows, and obviously Hugh Freeze brought it back in a sense, or at least brought it back to prominence, and boy, has he done that. We are talking about 6 commitments on the actual weekend, which was the previous weekend, not even this last weekend, and then what has carried over since then. I guess we're now at 4 more commitments with a possible 5th one out after that weekend coming along. So if let me just be honest with you, Mark, I'm pretty good at memorizing these things because I talk about it a lot. I have a list up over here to my right now because I'm having to reference this to keep up with everything because I'm going to forget something. I mean, we're talking about commits in 2026. Obviously, the 2025 class, the most important one at the time. It's the most prominent cycle right now, the most timely cycle. But we are getting people on the defensive front. We are getting specialists. Offensive guys are coming in too. It has been incredible. And I was told by somebody on one of my live streams, you know, some of the experts are predicting on the weekend 5 commits, maybe a 6. And I said, look, I can see 5, maybe, you know, between that weekend to the following week as things carry over and people make their decisions after they leave, but not 5 to 6 on the weekend. What did we get? 6 on the weekend. And then 3 more that week. A 4th one just happened recently yesterday. And now we're sitting here waiting for a potential another one that's being hinted at a lot. Some major recruiting analysts are predicting there will be a flip from Notre Dame to Auburn. Whether that happens, anybody's guess at this point, but it sure seems likely. And the way the momentum is going with Big Cat Weekend, I guess I just need to stop doubting at this point.
The last time that Auburn had a good football season, in my evaluation, 2019, they had a decent season, top 15 team, 9-4, lost the bowl game. A really good season, up to Auburn standards. I'd go to 2017, of course, with the 2 huge wins in November, the SEC championship game appearance. So a lot of critics, of course, in the era that we find ourselves would say, well, why is Auburn getting all these? They've been under 500 for 3 straight years. Why are they getting all these top recruits? They must be paying them. Well, first of all, we've got to remind everyone that's above board. That's fine.
We're good. Sorry.
Now, but also Auburn's never not recruited in the top 10 to 15 in the country, and more so in the top 10 when they've had stability.
Right.
And maybe they finally still have that at this point, have stability. And so I think in talking to college football fans, as I do from all over the country on a daily basis, we've lost track of how Auburn is supposed to be run and what type of talent is acquired and
Right.
how good this program is historically.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of goes back to this, Mark. I get asked a lot, and I'm sure you do as well. You know, what's your prediction for this season? What's your prediction this season? And I haven't given my official season prediction yet, but relating it to this recruiting conversation, I always say my operating procedure is Auburn at a bare minimum is capable of 8-4 every single year. Just historically, just the talent that they're able to bring in, as you can see right here, even having several seasons of below par, what we expect. Auburn just for some reason is able to convince these kids, whether no matter who the coach is, what the system of offense or defense there, we just historically are able to stay in the picture, even if we're a little bit further out of it. So yes, I get it's weird for everybody to look and see Auburn's just piling in the recruits right now in 2025 and 2026. But this is a lot of effort and work that's been put in by Coach Hugh Freeze. This is one of the things that he was using to sell himself for coming to take this Auburn job is his ability to recruit. He did it at Ole Miss. He, has done it at other places, and he's obviously doing that here now. As you just brought up with the comment, the #1 class currently in 2026. And while rankings really don't matter in the grand scheme of things, that is still a really cool thing to talk about. We're talking about a team that has yet to have in the last 3 seasons a winning record. Make that make sense for me. That just doesn't make sense at all. But in some ways it does if you know the history of Auburn and how they, like you said, they've been able to stay within that top 15, top 20 range and whatever recruiting site that you're looking at with who they're able to pull in. It's just we've got some good things to sell at Auburn, even outside of who the coach is. And when you have a coach that does their job at recruiting, it's an amazing thing what can happen.
Top 15 to 20 when they're down.
Yeah,
Folks
top one
might be a little surprised if they backtrack through the years how many top 10 classes Auburn has pulled in.
Yes, it can be surprising if you go back and look at the history. Auburn's just done a really good job. And historically, too, if you go back, you'll find some years, maybe even under Tommy Tuberville, where the classes weren't all that great, but he was so good at finding diamonds in the rough, these, 3 stars, so to speak, that he turned into 5 stars by the end of time of his coaching time here. So even on those years where you didn't have necessarily the hype of a recruiting ranking, you had a lot of guys being found and that were being looked over and turned into 5 stars by the time they left, which is what I always stress. It doesn't matter as much as what they come in with as what they leave with. And I know that's not the fun way to think about it or talk about it, but it's just the reality of the situation. And you've got the list pulled up here of just some of the guys: Jared Smith, Derek Smith. We're just pulling in Smiths left and right. That's some of the new guys that have just signed on. I can give you the full list if you want it of the ones that have come on through Big Cat.
Absolutely.
All right, let's roll through it. I got to look over here on my cheat sheet because, like I said, it's been a minute. Edge rusher. This is starting from the beginning of Big Cat Weekend to where we are at currently at the time of us doing this live stream. 2026 edge rusher Hezekiah Harris. 2026 linebacker Shadarius Tootle, best name ever. 2026 Jamichael Garrett, linebacker out of Alabama. 2025 now. We're going to get some more of those here. Blake Woodby. That's one that's was waiting. A lot of people thought that one was already going to come along sooner than it did. My estimation is they total hold off on the public commitment and let's utilize it for part of this hype of Big Cat Weekend. Defensive back for 2025. 2025 defensive lineman Antonio Coleman, who is the triple flip at this point. That was pretty exciting to see as well. Punter. I know a lot of people don't get excited about that, but we do at Auburn because we've got some pretty good specialists in our history. John McGuire for 2025. 2025 athlete Derek Smith, who we just mentioned. 2025 defensive back Anquan Fagans. And then we've also got Jared Smith out of 2025, who we also just mentioned. And just yesterday, Wayne Henry for 2026, a defensive back. So that's your list as of this point. There's a couple of cool storylines within this. Obviously, the flip of Antonio Coleman within this class, 2026 and 2025. You're starting to see a very odd pipeline develop for Auburn. From Maryland, St. Francis Academy. This is 3 now that they have either in the 2025 or the 2026 class. It's the weirdest thing ever. I can't explain it. there's always one state that Auburn seems to go into and just start snagging people out of. For the longest time, it was Arkansas, which isn't the weirdest thing to do for Auburn because it's technically the Southeast. But Maryland, that's just weird. That's a really thing. But you think back to DJ Durkin's time up there, I'm sure he's got some connections, and that may be what's happening there. But that's your full list. I mean, we can talk about it a lot of different angles, but it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, DJ Durkin brought in really good recruiting classes in Maryland when he was there, much better than they had experienced prior to his arrival. Folks, look at this. You've got just in the last week, the number one player in the class who is a top 20 player, Jared Smith, off the edge in the state of Alabama. Number two at his position. You've got Caleb Falk. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, and that is the little brother of Keldrick Falk, who is our rising star defensive end at Auburn. Yep.
Another top 50 player. I'm counting 8 top 100 players. Not that there aren't really good players outside the top 100. Sure. So if you see 128, I just stop counting it. 8 in the top 100. And again, just here in the last less than 2 months, Eric Winters, top 50 player roughly. And then you got Derek Smith, who we talked about, the wide receiver, who's number 2 at the wide receiver position.
Yep. And this is a flip from Alabama as well. So I think that's some of the things that you get excited just about the sheer numbers of people that are committing, but there's some pretty cool storylines such as the flip. So you had an Antonio Coleman flip, the triple flip now at this point, and then Derek Smith, who is also a flip from Alabama. So that the fact that here's the biggest thing. If you go look at the 2025 state of Alabama rankings, depending on where you go, you're going to see some variation. But I believe this site and this company that you have pulled up right now, you will find that Auburn has 8 of the 10 top 10 players out of the state of Alabama. Guess how many Alabama has in that site? 0. Explain that to me. Ohio State has the other 2. And there's some people convinced that we're just going to flip them 2 and sweep the top 10. Yeah. I'm not part of that group necessarily yet, but I guess, as I told you, I just need to stop doubting.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised by that because Ohio State, while having a great track record of going to, let's say, Florida in particular, it is difficult for them as being the one kind of entry from the north to be able to make those kind of overtures and get to the south. They do lose a lot of them that they initially get because of the distance and because players get talked back into, hey, stay home.
Right.
Yeah, it's rather astounding. And another point to extend on being able to retain the state of Alabama would be the football level in the state of Alabama just continues to. So I don't think nationally people think of Alabama as being a great football state from the standpoint of fan interest and, of course, the 2 great schools, but not at the high school level. But man, if you look at the players in the state of Alabama, it has eclipsed a lot of other what are considered traditionally better football playing states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, states like that. Alabama has just completely blown them away.
Yeah, and if you look at it, you're going to find 2 states that have a lot of talent come out of them, Georgia and Florida, which are 2 of Auburn's most important states to recruit out of in every single recruiting cycle they do. I think sometimes that gets overshadowed a little bit because you're right there next to them. And then we talk about just the national picture, your Ohio's, your Texas's, obviously, that get a lot of the attention in terms of where the major recruits are coming from in terms of numbers. Alabama high school football is pretty dang good, folks. I mean, if you've ever watched MTV, you probably saw the Hoover Dynasty that was built, the show that they did that called Two-A-Days, I think is what it was called. I don't know how Hoover's doing much these days. I think they're still relevant, but not to the dominance they were. The state of Alabama is pretty good at football. College, high school, we know a little ball. And I mean, that's just how it is. And the bar, as you kind of started off saying, is continuing to be raised on the college level. Alabama's success, as much as it pains me to admit it. And then Auburn is, trying to get back up to, but keep pace with that as well. It just continues to bring each other up because I think that's what makes it such a great rivalry, what makes it a great interest point in college football too.
Auburn and just about everyone else across the nation has been in camp just about a week right now. I'm guessing that there hasn't been too much that's come out of camp at this point, but anything in particular?
Yeah, obviously, it's just the excitement of camp, it being back, that gets everybody super excited about this. There's a couple points I can bring up from the first, we'll call it week. It'll technically be a week on Thursday that they started, but essentially we played or at least been through the first week. Right now, in terms of injuries, knock on wood, at this point, we appear to be pretty solid. There has been the storyline where Brian Battie, who was involved in that gun violence incident, obviously he will not be available this year. And we've also had Tyler Scott, who's had an injury earlier in the summer that says defensive back that was in the depth chart that was going to be out. But other than really Alex McPherson, our kicker, who's been dealing with a gastrointestinal issue, which sounds really weird, that would keep you sidelined, but I can promise you folks, it's serious, not serious, I shouldn't say that, but a legit problem. He seems to be on the mend and heading towards being back and available at some point, just no timeline on that. One offensive tackle that was just a little bit banged up and had to be limited in practice for the first 2 days, but obviously when you start going around hitting each other in pads, you're going to get bumps and bruises. But I feel like for some reason, this is the first practice in quite some time, fall practice, that started where we haven't had a major injury to note at the very beginning of it that hasn't already been addressed. So I think we're pretty healthy. The other thing is Cam Coleman. I don't know if you've seen this picture floating around, Mark, but I've been trying my hardest to get people to not just lump so much pressure on this wide receiver, this phenom, but he's not helping himself in that regard in terms of me, or helping me make that case. His teammates are starting to hype him up. We posted a quote from his teammate Austin Keys that says, described him as "dude's got bunnies," which obviously means he can get up really high. And then now the media team at Auburn is just starting to just build the hype train. And they posted a picture of just him going up and getting like a one-handed high in the air grab. And the dude seems legit. It's hard to deny it at this point that he's going to start. It's hard to deny it that we're probably looking, if he stays healthy, if everything tracks, at the next great Auburn wide receiver.
Kyle Loomis, E2C Network for everything Auburn. We, of course, care about the football, but Auburn community, culture, athletics across the board. Kyle, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. War Eagle.
All right, good to see Kyle. And I know I broke up the Michigan conversation, but wanted to track down Kyle, invited him here to talk Auburn football and this remarkable recruiting run. Okay. Mike G left a couple ridiculous comments in the chat. Mike, I think you need to go back and maybe listen to what I said concerning. You've completely misconstrued my words. Your line of thinking is so incredibly stretched that I can't even address it. All right. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We've got a big day. I'll be on Michigan Podcast at this afternoon. Of course, that's not live, so it doesn't make any sense for me to tell you when, but we'll be on a Michigan Podcast. And so I got to figure out what I'm going to say about Michigan football that doesn't have to do with cheating. Then we've got the Iowa show at 5:30 Eastern with Corey. That's on the Iowa channel, of course, 5:30 Eastern. The Nebraska show is at 7 with Justin Adams. The Michigan show's at 8 with TJ and John. So check out the Michigan show at 8 as well, of course, right here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you on Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern for 1 hour. And then plus, thanks for being here.